My dad always said the neighbor was a monster who killed his family, until we knocked on his door one Halloween. A quiet little suburb just outside of a mid-sized city in the Midwest. Think tree-lined streets, cookie-cutter houses with basketball hoops in the driveways, kids riding bikes until the streetlights come on. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone's business, but nobody really talks about the bad stuff out loud. The town was called Elmwood Heights. Fall had just hit hard that year, leaves turning bright orange and red, piling up on lawns, the air smelling like wet dirt and chimney smoke. Pumpkins started showing up on porches around late September, and by mid-October, every other house had those fake cobwebs and plastic skeletons dangling from the gutters. Our main family lived in a modest two-story on Maple Drive. Dad's name was Mike Reynolds, mid-40s, worked as a mechanic at the local garage, always had grease under his nails and a half-finished coffee in his hand. Mom passed away a few years back from cancer, so it was just him raising three boys on his own. The oldest was Ethan, 14, tall for his age, kind of the responsible one who pretended he didn't care about anything. Then came Caleb, 12, the mouthy middle kid who was always trying to prove he wasn't scared of anything. And the youngest, Noah, 9, big eyes, still believed in Santa a little too much and followed his brothers everywhere like a shadow. Mike was a good dad, but he wasn't big on sugarcoating things. He figured the world was tough, so his boys should know it early. One evening in early October, right around dinner time, they were all sitting at the kitchen table eating spaghetti. The windows were open because it was one of those weird warm fall days and you could hear crickets starting up outside. Mike took a bite, chewed slow, then pointed his fork toward the window that looked out at the house next door. "You see that place over there?" he said, voice low like he was sharing a secret he wasn't sure he wanted to share. The boys followed his finger. The house next door, number 417, was the one everyone called the old Carter place. It sat a little farther back from the street than the others, yard overgrown with tall grass and weeds that nobody ever mowed. The paint was peeling in long strips, windows dark, porch light never on. One of the shutters hung crooked like it had been half-pried off years ago and never fixed. Ethan shrugged, trying to play it cool. "Yeah, what about it?" Mike set his fork down. "That monster inside killed his own family." The table went quiet, even the clink of silverware stopped. Caleb snorted, but it sounded forced. "Dad, come on, that's just some dumb story kids tell." Mike didn't smile. "It ain't a story, Caleb, it's what happened 30 years ago, maybe a little more. Guy who lived there, name was Harold Carter, lost it one night. Wife, 2 little girls. Gone. Police said he did it. Never went to trial though. They found him sitting on the porch steps covered in blood, just staring at nothing. Said he didn't remember a thing. They locked him up for a while, then let him out cause the doctors claimed it was some kind of breakdown, not murder on purpose. But nobody believed that. He came back to that house and he's been there ever since. Alone." Noah's fork froze halfway to his mouth. He really killed them." Mike looked at his youngest. "That's what everyone says, kid, and that's why nobody goes near that place. Not on Halloween, not ever. Kids run past it, hold their breath, dare each other to touch the fence, but nobody knocks, nobody rings that bell." Ethan leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "So why's he still living there? Why doesn't the town make him leave?" "'Cause it's his house, paid off, and honestly, most folks just pretend it ain't there. Like if they don't look at it, it stops being real." The boys didn't say much after that. Dinner wrapped up quick, dishes done in silence, but you could tell it stuck in their heads. Especially Caleb, he kept glancing out the window like he expected to see something move behind those dark curtains. The weeks ticked by, Halloween got closer. The neighborhood was buzzing, costume parties, hayrides, the usual stuff. Ethan and Caleb started hearing the story again at school. Different versions. Some said Harold used an axe, others said poison. One kid swore he buried them in the backyard under the old oak tree. Every version ended the same: don't go near the Carter house. But the more they heard it, the more it felt like a challenge. One afternoon, a couple days before Halloween, the three of them were shooting hoops in the driveway. Caleb missed a layup, ball bouncing into the street toward the Carter side. He jogged over to grab it, hesitated at the edge of their yard, then kicked it back instead of crossing the invisible line. Ethan smirked, scared. "Shut up," Caleb snapped. "I'm not scared, I just don't want to get murdered by some old psycho." Noah piped up from the sidelines, sitting on his bike. What if he's not a psycho? What if it's all made up?" Caleb laughed. "Yeah, right, Dad wouldn't lie about something like that." But Ethan got quiet. He stared at the house. "Dad said he killed them, but he never said he saw it. It's just what everyone says." That planted the seed. Halloween night rolled in cold and clear. Full moon, almost too bright, wind rattling the dry leaves. The boys had decent costumes. Ethan went as a zombie football player, Caleb a cheap scream mask guy, Noah a little vampire with plastic fangs that kept falling out. They hit the usual streets, pillowcases filling up fast with candy. But every time they looped back toward Maple Drive, their steps slowed. They stopped at the end of their block looking down at the Carter house. Porch light off as always. No jack-o'-lantern, no fake graveyard, just darkness. Caleb shifted his bag. We could, just knock, see what happens. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You serious? I'm just saying if he's some killer he'll probably chase us off. If he's not, then whatever, free candy, right? Noah looked between them, eyes wide. I don't know, guys. Caleb grinned under his mask. Come on, Noah, you're always saying you want to be brave like us. This is your shot. Ethan stared at the house for a long second, then he shrugged. Fine, but if anything weird happens we bolt, no hero crap. They crossed the street together, hearts hammering. The closer they got, the louder the night sound seemed. Crickets, distant laughter from other trick-or-treaters, wind in the trees. The gate creaked when Ethan pushed it open. Grass brushed their shins, up the cracked walkway, each step feeling heavier. They reached the porch, wood groaned under their sneakers. A single bare bulb hung above the door, but it was dead. Caleb looked at his brothers. Who's knocking? Ethan rolled his eyes. You suggested it, tough guy. Caleb swallowed, stepped forward and rapped his knuckles on the door. 3 quick knocks. Silence. Then footsteps, slow, heavy, coming closer from inside. The doorknob turned. The door creaked open about a foot. A man stood there. Mid-60s maybe, thin gray hair, flannel shirt buttoned wrong at the top, reading glasses perched on his nose. He looked normal, tired, kind of surprised. He blinked at the 3 costumed boys on his porch like he wasn't sure they were real. Then real quiet, almost a whisper, trick or treat. The boys just stared. He reached behind the door, pulled out a big plastic bowl, full of candy, full like he'd been waiting. I buy chocolate every year, he said, voice cracking a little. His eyes got shiny. But no one ever comes. He wasn't a monster. He was just a broken man who'd been alone for 30 years. Hey guys, real quick, pause the Minecraft for a sec. Imagine you're 14, standing on a porch you've been told your whole life is basically evil. Door opens, and instead of a chainsaw maniac, it's just some old dude looking at you like you're the first people he's seen in decades. Hearts pounding, candy bowl in his shaky hands. What do? Do you grab a Snickers and bail, or do you say something back? Honestly, drop in the comments right now, what would you have done standing there? Would you have run, or would you have stayed and talked to him? Let me know, cause this story's just getting started. The door stayed half open, just enough for the porch light from across the street to spill a pale rectangle onto Harold Carter's faded carpet. He didn't move to invite them in, didn't slam it shut either. He just stood there holding that big orange plastic bowl like it was the only thing keeping him anchored. Ethan felt his mouth go dry. The zombie makeup he'd spent an hour on suddenly felt stupid. He cleared his throat. A trick or treat. Harold's eyes flicked between the 3 of them, zombie football player, scream mask, tiny vampire with crooked plastic teeth. A small, shaky laugh escaped him, more breath than sound. Trick or treat, he repeated softly like he was tasting the words for the first time in decades. Then he tilted the bowl toward them. Go on, take whatever you want. I got the good stuff this year. Reese's, Snickers, those little Kit Kats with the pretzel, even bought the full-size bars, figured maybe. He trailed off, his free hand lifted, wiped at the corner of his eye quick like he hoped they wouldn't notice. Caleb, who usually talked big, was frozen. His mask was pushed up on top of his head now, hair sticking out everywhere. He finally managed, You really buy candy every year? Harold nodded slow. Every year since 1995, first Halloween after, he stopped, throat working. After my wife passed, she used to love handing it out, said the kids' faces were the best part of the night, so I kept buying just in case. Noah stepped forward half a step before he could stop himself. His vampire cape dragged on the porch boards. In a small voice, how come nobody comes? Harold looked down at the smallest boy like he was seeing him for the first time. His voice dropped even quieter. Folks got long memories around here, and stories grow bigger every time they get told. I don't blame him really. Easier to cross the street than wonder. Ethan shifted his weight. The pillowcase of candy hanging from his wrist suddenly felt heavy. Our dad said he said you. Harold's gaze moved to Ethan, not angry, just tired. Your dad's Mike Reynolds, right? Lives in 415. Ethan nodded once. Harold gave a small, sad smile. Mike was maybe 10 when it happened. Used to ride his bike past here every day on his way to the park. Used to wave at my oldest girl, Sarah. She was about your age. He paused. He probably remembers her better than he remembers me. Nobody spoke for a beat. Wind moved through the overgrown shrubs beside the porch, making them hiss. Caleb finally broke the silence. So you did. Harold's shoulders sagged a fraction more. I didn't hurt them, not the way people say. He looked past the boys into the dark yard like the answer was written somewhere out there. There was a fire, electrical, old wiring in the walls, started in the kitchen while I was asleep on the couch. By the time the smoke woke me up, he shook his head once sharp. They were already gone. I tried, God, I tried, pulled Sarah out first, then went back for Emily and my wife Claire, but the smoke, the heat. I could, his voice cracked clean in half. I got Claire halfway down the hall, that's when the ceiling came down. He lifted his left hand. In the dim light, they could see the skin was shiny, scarred, fingers crooked like they'd healed wrong. I don't remember much after that. Woke up in the hospital, police asked questions, neighbors talked, stories started. He snapped. He did it on purpose. Covered it up. After a while, I just stopped correcting people. What's the point when nobody wants to hear the truth? Noah's bottom lip trembled. That's really sad. Harold looked at him again. Something soft moved across his face. Yeah, kid, it is. Ethan glanced at his brothers. Caleb gave the tiniest nod. Ethan turned back. Can we come in for a minute? It's kinda cold out here. Harold blinked like the question didn't compute at first. Then he stepped back, opening the door wider. Sure, he said, almost too quiet to hear. Come in. Inside smelled like old books, coffee, and something faintly like mothballs. The living room was dim, one lamp with a yellowed shade in the corner. A worn recliner faced a small TV that wasn't on. Bookshelves lined the walls, stuffed double with paperbacks, and a few framed photos turned face down. The carpet was threadbare in paths from the recliner to the kitchen and back. Harold set the candy bowl on the coffee table. You boys want something to drink? I got Coke, water, maybe some apple juice somewhere. Caleb shook his head quick. We're good. They stood there awkwardly in a loose semicircle, costumes looking out of place among the faded furniture. Harold sank into the recliner like his legs couldn't hold him anymore. He rubbed his scarred hand over his knee. You don't have to stay long, I know how it looks. 3 kids disappear into the murder house on Halloween, people'll talk. Ethan shrugged, we're not scared. Harold studied him for a second. Maybe you should be, not of me, just of how fast a story can ruin somebody. Noah pointed at one of the face-down photos on the shelf. Is that your family? Harold followed his gaze. After a long moment he reached over, turned the frame upright. A woman with curly brown hair smiled at the camera, 2 little girls in front of her, one maybe 7, one maybe 4, both grinning with missing teeth. Harold stood behind them, arms around his wife, looking younger, eyes bright. That's Claire, he said. Sarah, Emily, summer of '93, right before. Harold's throat clicked when he swallowed. Yeah, they were. Silence stretched again, thick and heavy. Then Noah asked the question nobody else wanted to. Do you still miss them? Harold looked at the photo for so long Ethan thought he might not answer. Every second I'm awake, he finally said, and most of the seconds I'm asleep too. He wiped his eyes again, faster this time. Sorry, didn't mean to get all you boys just wanted candy. Ethan set his pillowcase down. We got plenty, we just wanted to see if the story was real. Harold gave a dry chuckle. It's real, just not the way they tell it. Caleb glanced toward the door. We should probably head back soon, Dad'll freak if we're gone too long. Yeah, Ethan agreed, but none of them moved right away. Harold stood up slow. Wait. He walked to the kitchen, came back with a small paper lunch bag. He dumped half the candy bowl into it, full-size bars, the expensive ones, and handed it to Noah. For the road, and thanks for knocking. Noah took it with both hands. You're welcome. They shuffled toward the door. Harold followed, slow steps. On the porch under the moonlight, Ethan turned back. Hey, Mr. Carter. Harold paused. Yeah. If we came back sometime not on Halloween, would that be okay? Harold stared at him like he'd been slapped with something warm. His voice came out rough. You'd be welcome here anytime, son. Ethan nodded once. Cool. They walked down the cracked walkway, crossed the yard, stepped over the low fence line they'd never crossed before tonight. Halfway across the street, Caleb whispered, that was weird. Ethan didn't answer right away. Then, yeah, but good weird. Noah clutched the paper bag to his chest. I think he's lonely. None of them argued. Back home, Mike was waiting on the porch steps, arms crossed, porch light making long shadows. Where the hell you 3 been? You're an hour late. The boys looked at each other. Ethan stepped forward. We went trick-or-treating at the Carter house. Mike's face went blank, then hard. You did what? Caleb jumped in. He's not a killer, Dad, he's just old and sad. His family died in a fire, he didn't hurt anybody. Mike stared at them like they'd grown extra heads. You don't know what you're talking about. We do, Noah said quietly. We saw the pictures, we talked to him. Mike opened his mouth. closed it, looked at the paper bag in Noah's hands, the full-size candy bars sticking out, then he looked at the dark house next door. For once, he didn't have a quick answer. Hey guys, pause the game again. Imagine you just walked out of that house. You're standing in the middle of the street on Halloween night, full moon overhead, your dad staring you down asking what the hell you were thinking, and you know you just met the guy everyone's been terrified of for 30 years. But he cried when he handed you candy. He turned a picture of his dead family face up for the first time in decades. What do you tell your dad? Do you push back and say you were wrong? Or do you keep your mouth shut and hope he figures it out on his own? Drop it in the comments. Seriously, I want to know what you'd do right there in the driveway. The next few days felt weird, like the air in the Reynolds house had changed density overnight. Mike didn't yell, didn't ground them, he just got quieter, sat on the porch more staring at the Carter place like it was a puzzle he couldn't solve. When the boys came home from school he'd ask normal questions, homework, practice, you eat, but his eyes kept drifting next door. Ethan noticed it first. Dad wasn't mad, he was thinking hard. Caleb tested the waters one night at dinner. Spaghetti again, Mike's go-to when he didn't feel like cooking. Halfway through the meal, Caleb set his fork down. So we're probably gonna go over there again, like tomorrow after school just to say hi. Mike chewed slow, swallowed, looked at each boy in turn. You sure that's smart? Ethan answered before Caleb could. He's not dangerous, Dad, he's just old, and he doesn't have anybody. Mike rubbed the back of his neck. I knew Sarah, used to see her at the bus stop, she'd wave at me like we were friends, I was a kid, didn't think much of it then. He paused. After the fire, I remember the sirens, the smoke smell hanging over the whole block for weeks. Mom wouldn't let me go near the yard, said it was cursed or something. Noah spoke up, voice small, it's not cursed, it's just sad. Mike looked at his youngest for a long time, then he sighed. If you're going over there, you go together, you tell me when you leave when you get back, and if anything feels off, you come straight home. The boys nodded, all three of them. First visit back was awkward as hell. They knocked around 4:30 p.m., sun already low, sky that bruised purple color fall gets in the late afternoon. Harold opened the door wearing an old gray sweatshirt, sleeves pushed up to show more of those shiny burn scars. He blinked, then a small surprised smile. You came back. Ethan shrugged, said we would. Harold stepped aside. Come on in, I just put coffee on, you boys drink coffee. Caleb snorted, we're 12 and 9, man. Right, Harold chuckled at himself. Got some pop in the fridge, help yourselves. They filed in, same living room, same lamp, same quiet. But the face-down photos were all up right now, every single one, Claire smiling, Sarah and Emily on a swing set, Harold and Claire on their wedding day, him in a two big tux, her in simple white, both laughing like they couldn't believe their luck. Noah went straight to the pictures. You look happy here. Harold came up beside him, slow, we were. They sat around the coffee table, Harold in his recliner, boys on the couch. Harold pulled out a tin of shortbread cookies, store-bought but still nice. Figured if kids were coming over, I should have something better than dust, he said. Caleb grabbed one, took a bite. These are good. Conversation started slow, safe stuff, school, what they were into. Ethan talked about football tryouts coming up. Caleb bragged about beating some kid at Fortnite. Noah showed Harold a drawing he'd done in art class, a dragon with a top hat. Harold listened like every word mattered, asked questions, laughed at the right spots. When Noah finished explaining why the dragon needed a top hat because he's fancy, Harold said, sounds like a dragon I'd want to meet. They stayed almost 2 hours, didn't feel that long. When they left, Harold walked them to the door. You don't have to knock every time, if the porch light's on, just come in, I leave it on most afternoons now. Ethan nodded, okay. They crossed back to their side. Mike was in the garage pretending to organize tools. He looked up when they walked in. How was it? Caleb grinned, he gave us cookies, and he's funny, like dry funny. Mike didn't say anything right away, just wiped his hands on a rag, then he asked about me. Ethan met his eyes. No, but he remembered you, said you used to wave at Sarah. Mike's jaw tightened then loosened. Yeah, I did. That was it for that night. But the visits kept happening. Once a week turned into twice, then 3 times. After school, sometimes on Saturdays, they'd sit in that living room and talk. Harold told stories, good ones, how he met Claire at a county fair when they were both 17. How Sarah used to collect rocks and line them up on the windowsill like treasures. How Emily could fall asleep anywhere if you rubbed her back in circles. The boys told him their stuff too. Ethan about being nervous for his first game. Caleb about getting in trouble for talking in class. Noah about the bully at recess who kept stealing his crayons. Harold listened, gave advice when they asked, never pushed. One Tuesday in late November, snow flurries starting, they showed up and Harold had hot chocolate waiting. Real stuff, milk heated on the stove, cocoa powder, little marshmallows floating on top. They drank it in silence for a minute, just listening to the wind tap the windows. Then Harold said, quiet, I don't know if I ever thanked you boys properly. Caleb shrugged. For what? For knocking that night. Harold stared into his mug. I'd convinced myself nobody would ever come again, that the story was all anybody'd see. Then 3 kids in costumes show up and they stay and they come back. He looked up, eyes shiny again. You gave me something I didn't think I'd get again, hope. Noah set his mug down. You're our friend now. Harold's throat worked. Yeah, I guess I am. Mike started thawing too. One Saturday in December, the boys were heading next door when Mike called from the kitchen. Hey, they stopped. He walked over holding a foil pan lasagna still warm from the oven. Take this over. Tell him I said thanks for looking out for you guys. Ethan took it, you sure? Mike nodded once, yeah, I'm sure. Harold opened the door, saw the pan, saw Mike standing on his own porch across the yard watching. Harold lifted a hand, slow wave. Mike lifted his back. Small but real. Winter rolled on, visits continued. Harold started leaving his porch light on all the time now, not just afternoons, like a signal, like he was open for business. The neighborhood noticed. Kids stopped running past so fast, some even slowed down curious, but nobody else knocked, not yet. Then came the spring. And the thing nobody expected. Hey guys, pause the Minecraft real quick. Picture this, it's been months now. The murder house isn't scary anymore, at least not to these 3 boys. They've got a routine, hot chocolate, stories, shortbread cookies. Their dad's starting to come around. The old man next door isn't alone anymore. But life doesn't stay soft forever. What do you think happens next? Does it stay wholesome, or does something dark creep back in? Drop your guess in the comments, what's coming for Harold and the boys. The spring came in slow, like it was testing the ground first. April brought warm afternoons, the kind where the air smells like cut grass and someone's barbecue a few streets over. The Carter house didn't look quite so haunted anymore. Harold had started mowing the front yard, nothing fancy, just enough to keep the weeds from swallowing the walkway. He even planted a couple of marigolds in the old flower boxes under the windows, bright orange, like tiny signals. The boys kept up their routine, Tuesdays and Thursdays after school, sometimes Saturday mornings. They show up with whatever they had, homework they needed help with, a new video game to show off on Harold's ancient laptop, or just stories about the week. Harold always had something ready. Lemonade from concentrate, a bag of pretzels, once even homemade popcorn because Noah said it was his favorite movie snack. One Thursday in early May, Ethan showed up alone. Caleb had baseball practice, Noah was at a friend's house. Ethan knocked, waited. Harold opened the door wearing his usual flannel, but his face looked different, paler, eyes a little sunken. Hey kid, Harold said, voice rougher than usual, just you today. Yeah, the others are busy. Ethan stepped inside. The living room smelled faintly of menthol cough drops. You okay? Harold waved it off. Just a cold, nothing big. He sank into the recliner slower than normal. Grab yourself a Coke if you want. Ethan got the can from the fridge, came back, sat on the couch. He noticed the pill bottles on the side table, now 3 of them, labels facing away like Harold didn't want them seen. They talked for a while, school ending soon. Summer plans. Ethan mentioned he'd made varsity football as a freshman, big deal in their school. Harold smiled, genuine but tired. Your dad must be proud. He is, he came to the scrimmage last week, yelled louder than anybody. Harold nodded, looked out the window at the Reynolds house. Good man, your dad always was. Ethan hesitated, then, he talks about you sometimes, not a lot, but he doesn't call you the monster anymore. Harold's eyes came back to Ethan, soft, that means something. They sat quiet for a minute, clock on the wall ticked loud. Harold cleared his throat. Listen, Ethan, I've been meaning to say if anything happens to me, I got a will made up. Lawyer downtown, name's Paul Grayson, everything goes to you boys. Ethan froze, Coke halfway to his mouth. What? Not trying to scare you. Harold rubbed his scarred hand over his knee. Just, I'm not a young man and I got nobody else. You 3 gave me more good days in the last 6 months than I had in the 29 years before that. If something happens, I want you to have the house, sell it, keep it, whatever. And there's some money saved up, not a fortune, but enough for college funds maybe, or a good used car when you turn 16. Ethan set the can down hard. Don't talk like that. Harold gave a small shrug. Life talks like that whether we want it to or not. Ethan stared at the floor, carpet threads worn thin in front of the recliner. You're not dying, right? Harold didn't answer right away. Then, doctor says it's congestive heart failure, been coming on slow, they got meds, but another shrug, time's time. Ethan's throat felt tight. Does anybody else know? Just you now, Harold leaned forward. Don't tell your brothers yet, they're young, let 'em have the summer first. Ethan nodded even though it felt wrong. They didn't talk much more after that. Ethan stayed another half hour, mostly quiet. When he left, Harold walked him to the door like always. See you Tuesday, Harold asked. Yeah, Ethan said, voice thick, Tuesday. He crossed the yard. Mike was in the driveway washing the truck, saw Ethan's face and shut the hose off. What's wrong? Ethan looked back at the Carter house, porch light already on even though it was still daylight. He's sick, Dad, really sick. Mike dried his hands on his jeans, looked at the house too, long time. Then he said, I'll go over tomorrow, talk to him. The next day, Friday, Mike knocked on Harold's door around 6. Boys were inside eating dinner, but Ethan heard the knock through the open window. He got up, watched from the kitchen. Harold opened the door, looked surprised. Mike stood there in his work shirt, still greasy from the shop. Harold. Well, Mike. Neither moved for a second. Mike finally spoke, can I come in? Harold stepped back, of course. The door closed behind them. The boys waited, dinner got cold. Almost an hour later, Mike came back across the yard, face unreadable. He walked straight to the kitchen table where the boys were pretending to eat. He pulled out a chair, sat heavy. He told you, Ethan asked. Mike nodded once, yeah. Caleb, is he gonna be okay? Mike rubbed his face, no kid, probably not. Noah's eyes filled up fast, but he's our friend. Mike reached over, squeezed Noah's shoulder, I know. Silence. Then Mike said I asked him if he'd let me help, drive him to appointments, pick up groceries, whatever he needs. Ethan, what'd he say? Said he'd think about it. Mike looked at each of them. But he also said if it comes to the end he wants you boys there, not in the hospital, here, at home. Said you three are the closest thing to family he's had since '95. Caleb wiped his nose on his sleeve, we'll be there. Mike nodded, yes we will. Summer started quiet. Harold got weaker. Some days he was okay, sat on the porch with them, told old stories about Claire teaching the girls to ride bikes in the driveway. Other days he stayed inside, recliner pulled close to a fan because the heat made his chest hurt worse. The boys visited every day now, brought books from the library, played cards, watched baseball on the little TV. Harold laughed less, but when he did, it still sounded real. One humid August evening, sun just down, crickets loud, Ethan, Caleb, and Noah were sitting on the living room floor playing Uno. Harold in his chair, blanket over his lap even though it was 80 degrees. He watched them argue over a draw 4 for a minute, then quiet. Boys. They looked up. Harold's voice was thin. When I go, don't be scared of it. Death, I mean, it's just quiet, like the house after everybody's gone to bed. I've been practicing for 30 years, I'm ready. Noah crawled over, put his head on Harold's knee. We're not ready. Harold rested a shaky hand on Noah's hair. I know, but you'll be okay. You got each other, you got your dad, and you got memories of an old man who thought you hung the moon. Caleb's voice cracked, we love you, Harold. Harold's eyes closed for a second, tears slipped out the corners. Love you too, he whispered, all 3 of you. He died 3 weeks later, peaceful, in his sleep. Mike was there that night, sitting in the kitchen drinking coffee while Harold rested in the recliner, called the boys over at 2 a.m. They came in pajamas, stood around the chair. Harold looked asleep, just still. The funeral was small. Just Mike, the boys, the lawyer Paul Grayson, and a couple neighbors who finally felt safe enough to show up. Afterward at the graveside, next to Claire, Sarah, and Emily, Paul handed Ethan a thick envelope. Harold wanted you to have this now. Inside, deed to the house. Bank statements showing just over $87,000 saved over 30 years of careful living, and a single folded note in Harold's careful handwriting. Ethan opened it last, sitting on the front porch of what used to be the forbidden house. Sun setting, sky orange like the marigolds Harold planted. The note read, you gave me hope when I thought hope was done with me. You were the first ones I told my wife about today. Tell her hi for me when you get there someday, and thank you for knocking. Harold. Ethan folded it back up, looked at his brothers sitting beside him, then at their own house where Mike stood in the doorway watching them. Caleb wiped his eyes, what do we do now? Ethan stared at the note a long time. Then he said, we keep the porch light on. Hey guys, real quick before we wrap this. You just read the end of a story that started with terror and ended with love. An old man waited 30 years for someone to knock, 3 kids did, and everything changed. If you've made it this far, thank you for sticking with it. Now I gotta ask, has anyone in your life ever been the herald? Someone everybody wrote off but turned out to just be hurting, or maybe you've been the one who knocked when nobody else would. Drop it in the comments. I read every single one of these. And if this story hit you, smash that like, subscribe if you haven't, turn on notifications. We've got more real ones coming. Until next time, keep your porch light on. You never know who's waiting in the dark.